The middle class was supposed to be the reward. Work hard, get a good job, buy a house, raise a family. That was the deal. But somewhere between your parents' generation and yours, the deal changed. And nobody told you. You're doing everything right. You have a job. You pay your bills. You're not reckless. But the gap between where you are and where you want to be keeps getting wider. Not because you're failing, because the system itself has shifted underneath your feet. In 1971, the middle class made up 61% of American households. Today, that number has fallen to 50%. And it's still dropping. But here's what the statistics don't capture. It's not just that fewer people are middle class. It's that being middle class feels completely different now. In 1980, the median home cost about 3 times the average annual salary. Today, it costs more than 6 times. In 1980, a college degree could be paid off working a summer job. Today, the average student debt takes over a decade to repay. And wages? Adjusted for inflation, the average American worker earns barely more today than they did in 1979. 40 years of work. 40 years of productivity gains. 40 years of economic growth. And the typical worker has almost nothing to show for it. People aren't imagining it. They aren't lazy. They aren't bad with money. The math just doesn't work the way it used to. You can feel it in your daily life. Groceries cost more. Rent costs more. Healthcare costs more. Childcare costs more. And somehow, your paycheck stays the same. Consider this. In 1960, a single income could support a family of 4. Buy a house, own a car, send kids to college, take a vacation once a year. Today, 2 incomes often isn't enough to do the same. That's not a lifestyle choice. That's a structural collapse. And the cruelest part? The people most affected are told the problem is personal. Cut your subscriptions. Skip the coffee. Stop eating avocado toast. As if $15 saved on lunch is the reason people can't afford a $400,000 house. This isn't a personal failure. This is a pattern. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Meet Chris. He's 32 years old, lives in a mid-sized American city, works in project management at a logistics company. By almost any definition, Chris is doing well. He earns $62,000 a year. That puts him solidly in the middle class. He has a steady job, health insurance, a 401k he contributes to every month. When Chris was in his early 20s, he thought that by 32 he'd own a home, maybe have a kid, be building something real. Instead, he rents a 1-bedroom apartment for $1,450 a month. His student loans from a state university cost him $380 a month. Still 8 years left on that payment. His car payment is $310. Insurance, $140. Before he buys a single meal, pays a single utility bill, or puts $1 toward anything, $2,280 leaves his account every month in fixed costs. His take-home pay after taxes is about $3,900. That leaves $1,620 for everything else. Food, gas, phone, internet, clothes, dentist, haircut, an occasional dinner out. At the end of the month, Chris saves about $200, if nothing goes wrong. But something always goes wrong. Last spring, his car needed new brakes. $600. 3 months of savings, gone in one afternoon. He's not in crisis, but he's never more than 2 or 3 bad months from one. And the house? The median home price in his city is $340,000. A 20% down payment would be $68,000. At his current savings rate, that's 28 years away. By then, home prices will have moved again. Chris isn't reckless. He isn't buying luxury items. He isn't going on expensive vacations. He's just living. And living, it turns out, has become very expensive. Here's the first thing nobody tells you. Financial stress doesn't just feel bad. It makes you worse at making decisions. In 2013, researchers at Princeton and Harvard conducted a study. They found that financial worry consumes so much mental bandwidth that it measurably reduces cognitive performance. The effect was equivalent to losing 13 IQ points. Think about what that means. When you're stressed about money, you don't just feel worse. You think slower. You plan less effectively. You make more short-term decisions. This is called the scarcity trap. When your mind is preoccupied with survival, it pulls focus away from everything else. You stop thinking about the future. You start thinking about this week. There's a famous study about this with farmers in India. Researchers tested the cognitive performance of sugarcane farmers before and after harvest. Before harvest, when money was tight, their scores were significantly lower. After harvest, when they had cash, their scores improved dramatically. Same people, same intelligence, different financial circumstances. The conclusion was stark. Poverty itself taxes mental bandwidth. And this isn't unique to farmers in India. It's universal. When you're worried about making rent, your brain is not operating at full capacity. It's running a constant background process called, "How do I survive this month?" Chris knows he should invest more. He knows he should build an emergency fund. But every month, there's something urgent. A bill, a car repair, a medical copay. And the urgent always beats the important. This is by design, not by accident. When people live paycheck to paycheck, they become captured by the present. They can't afford to take risks. They can't afford to wait for better opportunities. They can't afford to say no to a bad job because the alternative is nothing. The system doesn't need to be overtly cruel. It just needs to keep people busy surviving. And survival crowds out everything else. Now here's the second force working against Chris. It's called lifestyle inflation. And it's more insidious than most people realize. Lifestyle inflation isn't just about buying a bigger TV when you get a raise. It's structural. The cost of a normal, respectable middle-class life has quietly escalated far beyond what wages have grown. Think about the baseline expectations of a middle-class existence in America today. You need a car. In most cities, public transit is not a real option. That means a car payment, insurance, registration, maintenance, gas. You need a smartphone. Try getting a job without one. You need the internet. Try doing your taxes, finding work, or communicating without it. You need health insurance. Without it, one emergency can bankrupt you. If you have children, you need childcare. The average cost of full-time childcare in the United States is now over $1,200 a month. None of these are luxuries. They are the minimum requirements of modern life. And the price of every single one of them has risen faster than wages. There's another story here too. Consider two co-workers at the same company in 1985. Both earn $30,000 a year. One owns a home they bought 5 years earlier. The other rents. Over the next 20 years, the homeowner's net worth compounds quietly in the background. Their home doubles in value, then doubles again. The renter's income grows, but their net worth stays flat. Same jobs, same salaries, completely different outcomes. This is what economists call the asset economy. In an asset economy, wealth doesn't come primarily from what you earn. It comes from what you own. And the cost of entry to that system keeps rising. Here's where it gets structural. The American economy used to be primarily driven by wages. People worked. They got paid. They spent that money. The economy grew. But starting in the 1980s, something began to shift. Assets, stocks, real estate, bonds started generating returns that outpaced wage growth. In 1980, the total value of the U.S. stock market was roughly equal to the size of the U.S. economy. By 2023, it was nearly twice the size. The economy grew, but the stock market grew faster. And most of that growth went to people who already owned stocks. The bottom 50% of Americans own less than 1% of all stocks. The top 10% own over 87%. So when the market rises, and it almost always does over time, 90% of the gains go to 10% of the people. The economist Thomas Piketty spent decades studying this. His conclusion was simple and devastating. When the return on capital exceeds the growth of the economy, wealth concentrates, automatically, without anyone planning it. Here's what that looks like in practice. If you own $500,000 in index funds, and they return 7% a year, you make $35,000 a year while you sleep. That's roughly what Chris earns working full-time for 6 months. But Chris doesn't have $500,000 in index funds. He has $6,000 in a 401k. At 7%, that earns him $420 a year. The person with assets gets richer by existing. The person without assets gets richer only by working. And the gap between those two positions grows every single year. This is why the top 1% of Americans now hold more wealth than the entire bottom 90% combined. It's not because they worked harder, it's because they own more. And assets, once accumulated, compound. Compounding is the closest thing the financial world has to magic. But magic only works if you already have something to compound. If you're starting from zero or from debt, the math runs in reverse. You're not building wealth. You're paying interest to someone who already has it. The people at the top of this system aren't necessarily smarter. They aren't necessarily working harder. They are positioned differently. And position in an asset economy is almost everything. Here's what took me the longest to understand. The middle class isn't disappearing because of individual failure. It's disappearing because the ladder has been pulled up. For decades, the path was clear. Get a degree, get a job, work hard, buy a home, retire with a pension. Each step was accessible. Each step was affordable. Each step built on the last. But every rung of that ladder now costs significantly more than it did a generation ago. The degree costs more. The home costs more. The pension has been replaced by a 401k you have to fund yourself, manage yourself, and hope doesn't crash right before you retire. And here's the part that rarely gets discussed. Risk has been transferred. In 1970, most corporate workers had defined benefit pensions. The company bore the investment risk. You showed up, you worked, and retirement was guaranteed. Today, 401ks dominate. You bear the risk. You choose the funds. You absorb the losses. The same transfer happened in healthcare, in education, in housing. The system didn't just get more expensive. It offloaded its risks onto individuals who were least equipped to carry them. And so two people can work equally hard their entire lives and arrive at retirement in completely different places. Not because of effort, because of timing, inheritance, access, and luck. Chris understands this, somewhere beneath the daily grind. He knows the game has changed. He just doesn't know how to play a game that wasn't designed for him to win. We tell ourselves a comfortable story, that wealth is the result of effort. That the middle class is shrinking because people spend too much, save too little, and don't try hard enough. It's a comforting story, because it means the solution is simple. Try harder. Be better. But the data tells a different story. Productivity in America has risen over 60% since 1979. Worker compensation has risen less than 18%. The gap between what workers produce and what they're paid has never been wider. That gap didn't go nowhere. It went somewhere. It went into asset prices. It went into corporate profits. It went into the portfolios of people who were already wealthy. The middle class is not disappearing because people stopped working hard. It's disappearing because the economic system has structurally shifted away from rewarding labor and toward rewarding ownership. And ownership concentrates. That's what it does. That's what it has always done. Here's something worth sitting with. Jeff Bezos doesn't earn his wealth. He accumulates it. His net worth grows not because he works more hours. It grows because Amazon stock increases in value. He owns a piece of an asset, and the asset does the work. Now, most people will never own Amazon, but the principle applies at every scale. The person who owns a rental property accumulates wealth while they sleep. The person who rents it makes their landlord wealthier every month. The person who owns index funds grows their net worth in a bull market. The person who lives paycheck to paycheck misses the entire ride. It's not about intelligence. It's not about effort. It's about which side of the ownership line you're standing on. The people who thrive in this system are not the ones who work the hardest. They're the ones who understand that the game is no longer about income. It's about assets. It's about position. It's about entering the compounding machine early enough to benefit from it. Most people spend their lives running faster on a treadmill, wondering why they never seem to move forward. The answer isn't to run harder. It's to understand what the treadmill is and who it was built for.